Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com as well as the mobile app. The first episode of 2024. A happy and a healthy new year to all our listeners and our viewers. He is Howard Cross. I'm Lance Meadow, and this program is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Multiple ways to interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can also hit us up on Twitter, hashtag Giants Chat. You can also directly interact with the two of us because Howard is a big presence on Twitter. Let me tell you, man, nobody's a bigger fan of social media than the man sitting to the left of me.
All over it.
At Howard Cross 87. I am at Lance Meadow, one word, last name Medow. And as a reminder, you can find the archive of the show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. So we'll recap the game against the Rams on Sunday because we did not have an episode yesterday. And then we'll also delve a little bit into some rumors coming out of Philadelphia in terms of their approach for Sunday's game against the Giants. But Howard, let's start with this Rams game. And you and I touched on it also on the latest edition of the Giants Hangout podcast that individuals could check out on Giants.com and the mobile app. But one of the big themes is all of the little things that added up in that contest. The penalties, specifically in the fourth quarter, that wiped out 64 yards worth of yardage. You look at the missed extra point, the missed field goal at the end. You talk about third down conversions, fourth downs. They had 2 4th-and-1s that were short where they turned it over on downs. And it's the cumulative effect where we could talk about the 2 splash plays, the 80-plus yard touchdowns, but a lot more, in my opinion, basically canceled that out.
Yeah, but you got to think about this. Like I keep telling guys all the time, like don't look at the game as a win or a loss. Unfortunately, I know we're fans and you always want them to win, but you got to look at them starting to get better in the small places. And the offensive line, you know, as bad as they played all year, they've played a little bit better at the end to give. We never had a chance to throw a long ball. We never had a chance. You were getting hit in the second step or 3-step drop.
Sure.
So you had some positives. You had some positives on defense. You know, finding a way to slow down 2 explosive receivers for the most part. Missed tackle, gave up a big play, but for the most part, they did something good for a change. You know, and I get the whole they can't do, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, but they haven't been doing it all year. They haven't. And now they're playing some of the cream of the crop, the guys that are going into the playoffs, the guys that are fighting for playoff positions, and they're holding their own. So in my mind, I'm like, they're getting a little bit better. They have things to build on. They have things to prove. They're actually, you can see some things that they could look forward to in the coming years. Like, okay, well, this was kind of working. Let's see if we can build on this and expand from this. And that's what they got to figure out what they're going to do. To keep telling me over and over and keep talking about what they're not doing, I'm like, well, they haven't been doing it the entire time. It's almost like somebody's like, they're going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to do it perfectly. They're not going to do it perfectly. So you got to take what you can get. You're your third quarterback. You're on God knows how many different linemen we've changed. You're your all-star rookie cornerback out of the game. You know, Dexter, who's a man amongst boys, has a pulled hamstring. Even though he's still playing, he's playing. You're doing the best you can with what you got. We're on our 5th kicker, I think.
Well, 5 have been on the roster. 4 have kicked in a game because Cade York, remember, never got into a game. So you want to be technical on this program. Yes.
Technically, we got a lot of kickers.
That's fair. 4, I would say, meets that criteria. No doubt about it.
So it's they're getting better in certain spots. They're making some plays. Their biggest problem is being able to close games out.
Sure.
You know, so that's been the biggest thing I've seen. Like they're right there at the edge. How do we close it out? How do we just not make one? We got to make one more play. Who can make the one more play? And it's just that's kind of failed them.
But that adds up over the course of the season, right, Howard?
But it started. Yeah. But what did you say? I don't know what you said, but I know what I said. If they got to 7 games, I would be very impressed this season. And everybody's they were in the playoffs last year. So guys, it's not that. Look, Green Bay was down last year. This team was that last year. I said, every year teams aren't like that. Every year things change. I was like, and remember, you played one of the worst schedules in the NFL, and you had a lot of like 1-score games. I'm talking about like not 7-point games. I'm talking about 3 points, 1 point. So if you're going through a season playing those teams that are historically bad and they're always looking for a way to come up, so to speak, and you're barely beating them, when you play the head of the pack the next year, you got to get lucky some. And that's pretty much what we were looking at for the whole season. So the games they've played, the games they've been in, like you can be mad at the Eagles game. Not the Eagles game, the Jets game. You can be angry at the Jets game. You could probably be angry at the Buffalo game, but they had them.
That came down to the final play.
Yeah, you know, so then, you know, that's 2
Missed
games.
opportunity in the red zone before the end of the first
2
half.
games, that's 7 wins. The Eagles game and the Rams game, they had chances to win both of those games. So all of a sudden you're at 9 wins. At 9 wins, does that accomplish a lot? Oh, wow, we go to the playoffs. You get smoked in the playoffs. Then where are you? You're starting over again, trying to figure out how to rebuild everything. Not rebuild, but add, and you're trying to add the best players you possibly can.
Well, also, I think what you laid out effectively, too, Howard, is it's the law of average. They tend to balance things out, right? Because you brought up the Jets and the Bills game, but I would point to the Patriots game they won because the opposing kicker missed a field goal.
Yep.
Okay, let's not forget about that. And then the Packers game. You know, that could have went either way, right? Randy Bullock hits a last-second field goal. Believe it or not, this was the 4th game at MetLife Stadium this season that was decided by a field goal in the final 34 seconds. So they've walked that tightrope, which you've laid out. And it was a bit of a microcosm of what occurred over the course of the season. No argument there. I just think when a game is that close, the little things get magnified, at least through the fans' lens. You know, you pick out a thing in the 3rd quarter, something in the 4th quarter. I think that's the mindset of a fan, at least, and that's how they look at the game.
Like you said, the microcosm of it is like this: the returner misses the ball. It rolls, doesn't get to the end zone. He gets tackled all the way back down. We're like, oh man, 80-yard touchdown. Same series. The next thing around, he's upset about missing the ball and how bad it went. Now he catches the ball, bounces off a couple guys. He gets an 80-yard return, which hasn't happened since God knows when. So
2015.
So you're getting back, something bad happens, something good happens. 2 things bad happen, 1 thing good happens. So you just gotta. It doesn't balance out because they're just making too many mistakes. You know, there are plays where, oh my God, they're really blocking the Rams front. That's really good. And then you're like, okay, he had to tackle him. But and people are like, he was holding him. I'm like, well, okay, was it 2nd and 20 or is it 2nd and 8 and your quarterback's limping? Like, which one did you want? So it was some good and some bad. I get it. I understand. But for what we have right now, keep fighting, and they're fighting.
Well, the positives are 2 straight weeks you've hit the home run to Darius Slayton, which is what you were talking about. And that's something that we have not seen consistently earlier in the season. So that I thought was encouraging. You brought up Gunnar Olszewski, and he deserves an extra effort award because he made a lot of guys miss en route to the sideline. We have not seen that since Dwayne Harris returned one for 80 yards against the Jets, Week 13, 2015. He also had a kickoff return against the Cowboys that season. It's been 132 regular season games, by the way, in between those punt returns.
They are trying to quote-unquote legislate out return games. So it's going to happen eventually.
Well, especially the kickoff, which has been non-existent. The punt, at least, is still breathing. But to your point, we have to resuscitate the punt, too.
Yes. It could be the same
based on the
thing.
rule book.
Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely.
So those are 2 things that I think come to light that are positive. Also, the score. Here's another game where they got over 20 points. And granted, I know special teams helped them, but Howard, how many games were we talking about where it was a struggle to just get to 17, 19 points this season?
Again, the team scored 13 points. The offense scored 13 points. That's about their average for the season. And everybody's like, wow, you guys scored 20. You were right there in it. I'm like, okay, well, if you say so. I don't argue with how we're getting the points. I mean, if you get
you don't get brownie points for it.
Yeah, you get interception for a touchdown or whatever it is. Your offense really still is scoring the same amount of points, no matter like who's quarterbacking, what's going on. That they're struggling, and they know they are.
Now, you also talked about the bodies up front and the battle in the trenches. And I know I started off focusing on the penalties, but I just want to highlight what happened in the 4th quarter because this is where the game tilted a little, where you don't necessarily put yourself behind the chains. And Howard, I know what you're going to say, and these were justified penalties. So I think fans need to understand that. This wasn't the officials calling, borderline calls. You go back, you look at the replays, they were holding on for dear life on a lot of these plays,
trying
right?
To protect their quarterback.
Correct. So I want to go over the last 3. Ben Bredesen's called for a hold, 2nd and goal from the Rams' 10-yard line. Howard, you're knocking on the door. You wind up settling for a 32-yard field goal because you lose 10 yards on that play. Daniel Bellinger called for a hold, 1st and 10 from their own 36. Okay, you're not in Rams territory, but you wiped out a 47-yard play. Now, you're going to say, well, you don't get that 47-yard play if Bellinger doesn't hold because he had the guy wrapped around his neck.
And if he didn't, what would happen? He would have put Tyrod in a pretzel.
Would have had a hit, correct, on your quarterback. So there's a give and take with respect to that. And then the last one was John Michael Schmitz called for a hold. That wipes out a 15-yard run by Tyrod Taylor, and the Giants ultimately were forced to punt. So We saw those splash plays.
And that hold was what allowed Tyrod to get free.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that's why. No, and I'm glad. No, I'm not disagreeing with you, Howard, because I think fans, they watch that game and they're like, oh, well, you could have a 47-yard grab, a 15-yard run. But you have to understand, the reason why you got those big plays was because they were holding on to prevent the hits on the quarterback.
It's not like it is on defense where, like, if the guy gets by you and you grab him and hold him so he doesn't get, too far beyond and you take a pass interference to that spot, it's like, well, we gave up 20 yards, but we didn't give up the touchdown. And in offense, if you do it, you're like, it goes backwards so far and everybody gets so upset, but you're trying to protect your quarterback at all costs, and sometimes you're just outmanned or outgunned, and you're just beat from the jump.
And the other two areas where they were beat were the 4th and 1s, because you had one situation where Tyrod Taylor mishandled the snap, so therefore you gave it back to the Rams. And then the other one was Jalen Hyatt was running a route, Howard, right to left, and then he wound up coming backwards, or at least his momentum brought him backwards.
He was coming back to catch the ball to make sure the guy didn't undercut him.
When Tyrod threw him the ball, they wound up losing a yard, and they needed one. So, those were also two turning points in the game where you gain a yard, perhaps you can at least continue the drive.
Yeah, I don't have the ability to run that fast, never have, even if I was pushed downstairs. So I don't know how to turn when you're moving that quickly. So, but if you get up, you got to get up and get past the yard to gain to get the ball. If he goes past the yard to gain, the guy probably undercuts him. So he comes back, he comes downhill, catches the ball, and if he's trying to roll it out to get back uphill, they tackle him right on the spot. Yeah. That's part of the game.
Well, and because once again, his momentum was taking him more towards Tyrod Taylor than it was the opposite side of the field.
And he's not the biggest body in the world. So you have to also think that he's not going in trying to force contact to get upfield because it's a 4th and 1. So you're inside the 5-yard barrier, so they can hit you pretty hard to keep you from going upfield.
Yeah, he's not running over guys too once he turns his phone.
But in the 5-yard barrier, there's a lot of touching and bumping and going on. So if he's trying to get around the guy so he can get back into position. By the time he gets downhill to get in front of him to make sure he doesn't cut him off or bump him, he's out of position and they're tackling him.
Well, because the wide receiver wants to run a clean route, and the defensive back's job is to not allow him to run the clean route. But that's allowed within the first 5 yards.
Yeah, and 5 yards is
within the first 5, they're allowed to do that.
It's very cloudy down there.
Oh, you can have contact in the first 5 yards. When you start getting into that 6-7 yard territory, that's where we get to the gray area about what you're allowed to do and so forth. The other thing that I thought was notable was the takeaways, and those have continued, Howard. Dane Belton, by the way, Jason Pinnock goes out of this game with a foot injury. Dane has not played much. He's been a special teams core guy. He only played, even with what he did in this previous game, Howard, 22% of the defensive snaps. That's not a high volume. And he comes in, Matthew Stafford overthrew one pass, gets the interception. Matthew Stafford threw wide on the other, gets the interception, and then he recovers the fumble. The only thing that I will point out, and I bring this up, you hear me say this all the time, it's not the takeaways, it's what you do with them. And they only had 2 field goals off of the 3 takeaways. And I think if you do the math, Howard, you want to walk away with more than 6 points when you take the ball away 3 times in that manner.
Unless they take it away and score with it, you're going to get what you're going to get. If they're not running their offense effectively from the 25 going forward, if you get a takeaway on the 50, are they going to get more effective?
Offensively speaking, meaning where they start the drive? No, it's not going to magically change matter where the starting field position is.
The way you just said, you got to get more out of them.
Well, no, but I'm saying, but what I'm saying is the mindset is if you go to any coach, Howard, if you were talking in general.
But I understand. But
the
way you're explaining it is like that they got to get more out of it. Like, no, they're not going to get more out of it because that's who they are. What you can hope to get down and score. If you get any points when the team is struggling like they are offensively, you should be happy. Now, Coach Dayball would probably punch me for saying that.
And that's where I'm coming from. I'm coming from his mindset, Howard. That's exactly where I'm coming from.
I'm watching guys. I'm trying to get improvements anywhere we can. And the ideal would be you get the ball on 50, we got to take a shot. You take a shot, you have the ball on your own 40 because they might get a sack. So
of course, this could be a negative result out of that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of selection, I mean, that is a good transition to the final possession where they missed the Mason Crosby 54-yard field goal. I don't know if they had 2 yards extra that it would have helped because that was way off, that field goal attempt. The wind really took that.
He didn't – I mean, he's been kicking here for like a week maybe, so he hasn't really felt the wind. He has to come in the stadium and practice kicking because the wind blows from the home sideline to the visitor sideline quite a bit. So And if you're like struggling and you know you got to hit the ball really, really hard or kick it really hard, so to speak, you're going to pull it. So he's had to kick it out to the right to pull it, to hook it into the goal if he's going to try to do that. That's the best I know about my kicking analogy, because it's like hitting a hard shot. When you swing too hard, you usually pull it. So I don't know if he could have made it. I think they needed to get a few more yards, but the only way to get a few more yards is like to run it up into the middle, try to put him into, ask him what side he wants it on, and try to go from there. The problem is they had a sack.
Well, they had a loss of yardage.
Yeah,
You're talking about Saquon ran for -2.
Yeah, he
second
didn't
10.
run for -2.
Yeah.
They stuffed him because
they met him by the time he got the ball. Correct.
Absolutely,
yes.
yeah.
There was a tremendous amount of penetration. And Brian Dable was asked about the play after the game, and he said multiple times he wished he had that one back. But remember, we're judging it based on the result going in. And Howard, you could speak of this, and I talk about this on various shows. Have you ever had a coach or a group of players? They come out of the huddle, they hear the play, and they say to themselves, "Man, we're going to lose 50 yards on this play."
Yes.
You have. You've been
Absolutely.
in a situation like that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You come out, you want to make every play work.
Correct. Okay. All right. I thought you were taking that in a complete opposite direction.
You're coming out and you want every play to work. But you have come out and you've heard plays called, and you're like, well, one player can't block somebody. And you know that, okay, well, that guy's going to be in the backfield. So you're trying to adjust in your mind, like, okay, and that's when things go really wrong, because you start to try to help that guy out before you get to your guy. So there are plays and there are players that you're playing against, and that like, okay, we can't stop, let's call it Aaron Donald or somebody. So you have to design plays around him to get away from him. But sometimes they'll call a play like, okay, we've been avoiding him all day, we're going to go right at him. I'm like, yeah.
Well, sometimes you avoid him and he still gets after you too, by the way. He's that good.
Or like playing against the Jets, like you throw it to the left side of the field the whole day because Sauce is on the right. And then there's one play that's like, he's going to be asleep. No, he's not. He's still over there.
Sure.
So it's like you get guys, you get coaches to think that maybe they're not paying attention this time. I'm like, no, that's why we haven't thrown at him the entire time. We used to go the whole games without throwing at Dion. Like entire games without throwing at him.
Well, Darrell Revis is another guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Teams avoided, right, when he was playing. That's why they called it Revis Island. Yeah, sure.
So it's there are players that have played. We've played whole games where you tried to avoid Reggie White, and I say tried because they would just move him around. Once you moved him to over the center or something, like, okay, well, we're screwed. Here he comes. So it was you just got certain guys can make plays, and when you hear the play call, we've had the play call, turn around and look, and like, he's not supposed to be standing there. That's the nature of the game.
Well, and on that play, it was actually their middle linebacker that made the tackle on Saquon Barkley. So this was not an Aaron Donald stop that we're talking about, just for the sake of context. And
no, it's because two guys got their hands on Aaron Donald.
Yep.
And nobody moves up to the linebacker.
Mm-hmm. And then Ernest Jones came through.
So that's an Aaron Donald stop.
No, I'm with you. But that's part of a team where you've got to take advantage when all the attention goes to Aaron Donald.
No,
the other defenders need to capitalize.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Well, that's where I was going with it. And they did, actually, because if you look at the game, and Aaron Donald, he had 2 sacks, but you have had really good seasons from Kobe Turner and Byron Young, 2 of their third-round picks, and those guys combined for 3.5 sacks in this game.
Yeah.
So they benefited from Aaron Donald's presence.
Absolutely.
Because he draws so much attention. I think we saw that all throughout the game. It's not as if the Giants went in blind. They knew that. But the goal is you want to hopefully keep the other guys in check and not allow them to have field days. And those guys have been having field days, not just against the Giants, but all season long. Yeah, for the Rams this season. A big reason why they won 9 games and they're in playoff contention. So that was obviously a big development for them to turn things around at 3-6. But here's another game where the Giants were competitive for the second straight week. And we'll circle back to where you started before we open up the phone lines, because I think your point was, Howard, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we've seen tons of Philadelphia Eagles games where it was a lopsided affair.
Yeah.
And they were getting sacked left and right. It was 2nd and 20, 3rd and 20. We didn't see that on Christmas.
No.
Now, with the Rams, based on the personnel they have, Aaron Donald and all these other guys, we also...
everybody
correct.
out there, yeah.
We didn't see another game where you're constantly playing behind the chains and you're trying to play catch-up. So, that's encouraging from that standpoint. Now, does that mean anything, Howard, for 2024? I don't know. It's a new team. It's a new schedule, right? That's what you were getting at. So you can only take so much away. But what we're seeing now is we are seeing much more competitive football.
Absolutely.
And based on previous years, recent history, that is a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, it kind of means, or could be meaning, that some of the divisions coming back to you, so now you know what you need to do to improve, how close you are just by the games you're playing, and you can get a little bit better. So it's going to be interesting because you never know what's going to happen going forward. But let's go to the Eagles game this weekend, but we probably should get some calls first.
No, we will.
Okay,
Yeah. No, we'll get into. I mean, I did tease that off the top, so
Yep.
I do want to address it because Nick Sirianni did have his press conference yesterday, but we could squeeze in a few calls. Boy, I didn't think you were going to tease the audience just like me, Howard. I thought that was my job, but I appreciate you providing a helping hand here as we move forward on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Few reminders before we open up the phone lines. Giants Huddle Podcast, you can check that out. Your favorite podcast platform, you go to giants.com/podcast. There's one game left. So this is the last time you're going to hear me read this. There's some single game tickets available, and you can go to giants.com/tickets to secure your seat. And then there's Giants TV. It's the official connected TV streaming app. Giants TV brings you original video content, game highlights on demand, and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, as well as the Giants mobile app. All right, let's open up the phone lines as we move forward here. Cliff is in New York. He gets us going on the first edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live in 2024. What's happening, Cliff? What do you got for us?
Hey guys, thanks for the rundown, and it really was. It's great to be so much more competitive than we were, and I got very interested in the box score on the defensive side because I got very interested in quarterback hits and finding out who this Kobe Turner was. He's number 89 overall last year, end of the third round for them.
Sure.
Interesting thing to note going forward here. But anyway, he's 288, and Aaron is still listed at 280. And between the two of them, they get 6 quarterback hits. Never mind the sacks. I think there was.
Well, Byron Young actually had 3. The other third-round pick, Aaron Donald, had 2. So the 2 rookies combined for 6. Donald made it 8. That's how effective these 2 rookies are this year. Yeah.
Right. So then I said, oh, well, we hit Stafford 7 times. That's pretty good. But it wasn't our big guys that hit Stafford. We only had Hadi and Nacho hit Stafford, and the other 5 were wing blitzes.
Well, Ojulari hit him twice. So, I mean,
Right.
Ojulari got to him.
So what I'm wondering is, it's in physics class, it seemed like it made a difference if you get hit by a bigger person than a smaller person, so I mean, I was just I tried to bring it up on the post game. It's like the 10 hits versus the 7 hits doesn't seem like it's that much. I thought disturbing Stafford to the extent we did was just terrific. I mean, made him look like he wasn't, the superstar that he was coming into the game, even though he obviously still is. And the best thing all day was the look on Sean McVay's face coming off the field of relief. He just looked totally relieved. But so I'm wondering about the hits. Because I know I've heard on the show, and I think it comes from Wink, that it's really important to hit the quarterback, and we certainly had that happening to Daniel, all over the place early in the season when people were jumping on him, and you guys were trying to say the man is getting hit before he's on the 3rd step, but I mean, they say that it matters to hit the quarterback, so I'm wondering, does it count that you get your bigger fellas to do the hitting? And obviously our biggest guy that can go upfield is Dexter, and he's 1.5 legs, so he didn't get there. And I was looking for and here's the real question I have. I was looking for DJ Davidson, and I did see him in the backfield a little bit, and I saw Jordan Riley a little bit, but not in the backfield. But they're bigger guys. They're bigger big guys. The guys that the Rams used for their hitting were 280, 288, and the one guy over 300, but not much. He was like Hadi sized almost, Well, and so that's what I'm asking.
Well, you have to.
All right, Cliff. Appreciate the phone call. Yeah.
When he's asking that, I respect what he's asking, but it's the ability of the player to get to the quarterback. It's not the size of the player; it's the ability of the player. And what you got is 3 guys. So you got Aaron Donald, who's probably, I want to call him over the hill, but he's like, okay, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm enjoying this, and when he gets tired of playing, he'll just stop. They won't put him out the pasture. He'll just like, that's good enough. I made a lot of money. I'm all pro. I'm going into the Hall of Fame. Appreciate your time. Bye-bye. And they went out and they found a guy that's close to similar to size and speed as Aaron Donald, and he's playing like Aaron Donald. And that's what you kind of want. So when you're asking us if the size of the guy that hits the quarterback matters, it does. But you got to have that guy with the ability to get to the quarterback. You named two of our young players and see them trying to get to the quarterback. They're not the same player. They're not the same. They have great run stopping ability, but the pass game, that initial quickness, that burst off the ball, that everything that you are looking for, that's not those two guys.
Yeah, the athleticism, which is key in terms of helping aid your cause to get after the quarterback. That's why you see a guy like Kobe Turner excel. He was a product of Wake Forest. He's not the same build and athleticism as the Jordan Rileys and the DJ Davidsons of the world. So, I mean, I'm with you, Howard. I'm not reading box scores and stat lines to look at whether or not he's 330 pounds versus this guy's 289 and that, he's going to sandwich the quarterback more and that's going to take a toll. Though I will say...
And also, you get penalized if you're really big and you hit him hard.
Well, if you land if you land on the quarterback, that's roughing the passer.
Absolutely.
Full body weight, that's a clear penalty.
Yeah.
We've seen that. No, that's a very valid point. And I would say this. I think you do want, though, a high volume of quarterback hits, Howard, no matter who it comes from, because you could argue that will take a toll on a quarterback over the course of the game. So, I mean, if you could get 10 hits on Matthew Stafford during the game, you'll gladly take that because even if you're not bringing him down, maybe you get a hit on his arm to impact the pass.
Well, what usually happens when you start hitting quarterbacks, their feet get happy. They start shuffling and moving around and they're looking, and you want to get their eyes down on you, looking at you instead of looking down the field at the receivers. So that's what the quarterback hits do. A cumulative effect of quarterback hits is like he's trying to see now where people are coming from to make sure he's out of the way so he can get the ball down the field. And what Wink has done is like, okay, if this isn't working, let me add a couple guys. And Bobby Okereke was doing a great job of watching the running back when the running back set in to block the other guy rushing, and he left a hole. Bobby would run through it. So you got 2 sacks on that. You got Jihad Ward, who had a great job of waiting his turn, basically. Like, you got guys coming off the edges, one guy blowing up the middle, then the quarterback releases, and he just releases right into his arms. So that's great for him as well. But, again, they're not hitting him and killing him and knocking him down like, unfortunately, like the people were doing Daniel. They're hitting him and getting in his way, which is a big thing because he hadn't been sacked before that. He was getting sacked maybe once a game. And then that, them sacking him that many times and hitting him that many times really threw him off his game, as you can see with the high throws and the errant throws.
Yeah, just 28 sacks the Rams allowed entering that game. Now, Stafford did miss one game, so he hasn't even taken all the sacks, but their offensive line has held up very nicely in comparison to 2022. And I just want to highlight what you brought up with Okereke, because if you go and you look at the 2 plays where he got to Stafford, he patiently waited for it to open up on the left side because everybody went to the right, and then he looped around. And, that's what you like to see out of a linebacker. That's a textbook play where you're reading the situation, you're not overcommitting, and then he sees the alley, and he took full advantage of it.
He understood that the running back was stepping up to block, not release, so he didn't have to worry about him running out and having to cover him inside out or in the chase position. So when he steps up into the line, he came out and he came with a great blitz.
Let's head back to the phone lines. Donnie's in Queens joining us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, Donnie?
Happy New Year, guys.
Same to you.
I think my biggest takeaway over the last couple of games and really just the Tyrod Taylor experience overall is that a quarterback that has an aggressive nature in terms of attempting to drive the ball down the field and not necessarily bail on the pocket quickly makes a big difference. And not that Tyrod is necessarily a better player than Daniel, but I don't think anybody would argue that there's certainly not a $30 million a year gap between the 2 players. So for me, just seeing the offense operate with somebody who gets the ball down the field, attempts to drive the ball downfield, and warts and all, Tyrod certainly has them. The offense has been far more explosive with him than Daniel. I mean, I can't think of more than 4 or 5 plays.
I don't want to be mean to you or anything, but you do remember early in the season when everybody was killing Daniel, like physically hitting him, and like they almost broke his neck.
Sure, but Howard, he has been on the team for more than just those 4 or 5 games. And I can't think of more than 4 or 5 plays where he's throwing the ball down the field in that time span, whereas Tyrod, in just a short period of time, he seems to be doing it 2 or 3 times per game. So just my thoughts on it is that certainly the Giants should be looking to turn the page at quarterback. I know Daniel will be back next year, but getting somebody in here for the future that has a big arm that looks to get the ball downfield will make a night and day difference for the franchise moving forward. So thanks for taking my call, and I'll hang up and listen.
You got it, Donnie. Appreciate the phone call. Well, you want to add something to that, Howard? Oh.
I just laugh when people call and say that. I'm like, there's no quarterback in the league, including Patrick Mahomes, that could play behind the line when they're not performing. They're just not. Josh Allen, big arm, one of the biggest arms in the league, wouldn't be able to do it. Everybody refers to Joe Burrow, and I'm like, yeah, you see where Joe Burrow is too. He's like on the injury list.
Right, he got hurt. Yeah, so multiple years.
It's just not what people are thinking. Daniel can throw the ball down the field. He can do a lot of things. He's mobile. He's a tough guy. All these great things, but that goes back to your cumulative effect of quarterback hits. That's the cumulative.
Well, and that's why I brought that up. Right, that's exactly why I emphasize that.
It's just going to get like when you're watching Tyrod. Tyrod is he's shuffling. He's looking around. He's trying to see like are they free? Are they free again? And then he gets a chance to throw it. But also the plays weren't designed the same as they were, now as they were early in the season. Early in the season, we were getting hit so much and so quick that they had to get the ball out quick and try to get the ball wherever. But later in the season, the line started to pick it up a little bit and started to be able to hold up just a little bit more. The backs did a little bit better job blocking. Bellinger played a lot more because
Waller got hurt.
Yep. So it gave the offensive line a little more protection with two extra guys in there and able to chip and move around, and you can get the ball down the field. And that's what's been the biggest difference. And when you're having a little success on your first downs, which we've been talking about a lot this year, first down, you get 2 or 3 yards, you get 4 yards. That play action pass play that gets the ball down the field, or it's not a straight drop back where they know you're going to drop back. It looks better, and that's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, I think you have to take into consideration the dynamics of the offensive line and how much that has changed. We're not saying that they're now working with the number one offensive line in football, but the one that Daniel Jones had compared to the one that Tyrod Taylor is operating with is different, mainly because you've had more snaps with a lot of these guys playing together, Howard.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Pugh coming back, that helped out tremendously, bringing guys together, getting them to understand. You hear guys now talk about how they want to be bigger leaders on the offensive line, specifically Thomas saying, like, you know what, I'm going to be a little more vocal. I want to be a bigger leader. Now I know what I need to do to try to help bring our guys together and get better. So, he's been working at this for a while. He made All-Pro. Now he knows, like, okay, it's not just being an All-Pro. I want to bring my guys along with me. So those kind of things are things that are promising and looking forward. But early in the year, it was just they're out there trying to figure it out. Before the season started, coach was like, we're going to rotate the guards to see which two guards are going to work, and it just wasn't set. So they were doing the best they could. They had a lot of depth, I think, in different positions, but they didn't have a lot of depth interiorly in the line.
Well, and also you could argue that depth got injured too.
Depth,
right?
All of it got injured.
Well, I mean, Azudu got hurt, then McKeithen, then even Matt Parrott is another guy. All those guys that I just mentioned, they were not supposed to be starters, but guys that you could turn to in the event that you lose your regulars. So
and
the injuries
played left tackle for a while.
Came across the board. Yeah. Meaning you were putting guys out of position a little bit.
That was great.
Yeah, it's when you lose multiple players, that's what happens. I mean, that's unfortunately the name of the game.
And that was after game one.
Yeah, well, the dominoes started to fall very quickly this season.
Absolutely.
I think that is well documented. James is in Georgia joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, James? What do you got for us?
Hey, James.
What's going on, guys? Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Happy New Year.
Listen, I got a lot. I'm going to keep it short. Walking Barkley right now. Nobody right here on this phone is related to Daniel Jones, correct?
Nobody.
Correct, yes.
So it's okay to move on from him. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to say, oh, well, it's this guy's fault and nobody could have played behind this line, and if, circumstances aren't
but
perfect.
Nobody could have played behind the line.
But that's not true.
Actually, it is true, because when guys start getting hurt.
Guys playing behind the line.
Who?
Tyrod played yesterday.
Yeah.
Did he not?
He did.
Still alive. I remember Dayball.
James, the standard. Wait, James, hold on a minute. I just want to clarify. So your standard now for quarterback play is if they're still breathing after the game. That's the standard. You just said he's alive. I didn't know that's the standard. If you get out of a game and you're still breathing, That is a good overall performance. Okay.
I like
I didn't realize that.
Let him finish.
Okay, I didn't know
What
that.
Howard is saying
Yeah.
that no person that plays the quarterback position with an NFL arm can succeed behind a makeshift line, and that is just not a true statement in my opinion.
Well, I don't think that's. I mean,
obviously
Howard's next to me, so
there are
I'll let him
guys-
answer. But yeah, I mean, James, I don't think that's the
guys
point.
who have won games behind a line that aren't perfect.
Sure.
Nothing's going to be perfect. And if you
100%.
need a situation to be perfect for you to win, then you know what I'm saying, you got to move on from
No,
it.
and you can't
And if
operate
we
like
saw,
that.
And if we saw yesterday, the problem that we have is we need a quarterback. So I don't think like there's a lot going on. We need a lot on this team. That's
you go.
one thing.
There you go.
But-
Welcome back.
But when you have earned the number, the position that we have, and you're in a position to pick a quarter where you can get a quarterback, you don't just, oh well, we got Jones, let's give him another chance. No, you take the quarterback because for one,
That's
you
not
don't
what the
know if
coach
Jones is
that's
going to
not
be
what the
ready
coach and
week
the GM
one.
is saying, though. The coach and the GM is saying that they're going to be probably bringing a quarterback to the team, whether through the draft or through free agency. We're
True,
not saying,
but then you got to look at free agency. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
you know, we're not saying that they're not going to bring a
Yeah.
quarterback in. We're just explaining to people that when they're like talking about this, I'm like, man, that guys crying in the locker room and apologizing to him after the game. that's
But, I
that's
mean,
rough.
And then I also, and there's been a lot of backup and this and that. But last time I called, I've been pounding the table for Jaden Daniels, so I'm gonna keep doing that.
Okay, but James, nobody's saying that the Giants are absolutely not drafting a quarterback. It sounds like you're coming from the approach that that's not an option. Joe Shane at his presser specifically said the Giants have to address the quarterback position one way or the other because Tommy DeVito is the only other quarterback under contract. Tyrod's not under contract for next season.
And Daniel's not healthy, and they don't know.
Yeah.
And they're saying they're saying in fairness to the medical staff and to Daniel that he should be ready right around the training camp or whenever. But
they don't know. There's not 100% certainty.
And what I've said to people, like in public and not public, and Daniel will have to figure this out on his own. You don't know how healthy you are, and if one part of his game is running, that hinders that moment. So there's a lot to be done, a lot to be talked about in that moment. So that's why they're like, we got to get a quarterback. We don't know what we're going to have, when the season starts, so we got to figure it out. None of us have ever said that they're not going to get a quarterback. We're following what the coaches are saying and the GM is saying.
Yeah, you also don't know at this point, James, where they're drafting to.
Yeah,
this final game is going to influence that. We don't know. We don't know how things are going to play.
But we're not going to.
They could be in the top 5. They could be in the top 2.
Or they could be outside the top 5 too.
Or they could be outside the top 5.
No, I don't think we're getting outside the top 7. And you got, if you don't get a top 3 guy, you can name the 3 that you like and. Daniels, May, and Caleb. But then you got a Penix Jr. who just lit it up last night, who probably gonna get to mid first or whatnot.
Well, but you don't know that. I mean, listen, teams are hungry for quarterbacks. If he lights things up against Michigan in the championship game, his stock could skyrocket. You don't know. You don't know these things, James.
So now. But see, even if it skyrockets that much, look, we've seen plenty of drafts where we're at. We'll have a couple of options, is what I'm saying. For Giants to make a historic move in their franchise's history and draft a black quarterback, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Not saying that's the parameters, but you have guys that are way better than statistically than Daniel Jones was in his college career, and 4 out of the 4 top quarterbacks right now. So.
Well, I mean, remember, listen, there's no – James, we'll let you go on that note. Appreciate the phone call. I mean, that's a lot to digest. I will say –
Years ago when Cam Newton came out, he was jogging across the field. I was listening to the front office people were talking. They were looking at me. They were like, dude, that is a quarterback. I'm like, okay. I'm an Alabama guy, so I'm like looking at him like, oh, he's from Auburn, coach. They're like, no, that's a quarterback. They said the same thing about Andrew Luck, big burly guy jogging across the field. They look great, but at the end of the day, I understand what he's saying, and I think that the opportunity to for them to get a quarterback, yes, them drafting a African American quarterback, which is the conversation he was bringing up, be a historic moment. only if it works. So,
Correct. Yeah.
so you don't want to be the first guy, and it just goes down in flames. So I know that Joe and those guys, race minus race and everything, are trying to put together the best team possible, especially quarterback down, and they'll figure it out. I mean, and again, I'm not going to sit here and say Daniel's not at fault for some of the games, but some of the stuff that happens. But a lot of the times he knows what he's dealing with, and that's what they've been complaining about the entire time, how they're going to build the entire team. And I tell everybody every week, if you can start up front, offense and defense, you can fill in the rest. But if you don't have something up front,
yeah, well, that's the infrastructure of your house, right? If the infrastructure of your house is flawed,
no foundation,
everything else is going to fall down, right?
No foundation, no roof.
Correct. I mean, that's a basic principle of life. Yep. But I think what we could take away from the conversation we're having, what some of the callers are chiming in, is that you also need to be prepared for if Daniel Jones is not ready to go at the start of the season, because nobody knows the answer at this point.
But that's not even a conversation, because they've already said they're doing that.
Correct. Well, I'm just reinforcing that, Howard.
Okay.
I mean, no, because this idea that just because Daniel's still on the roster, that means they can't address the quarterback position. It seems some people think that way, but you can't operate when you build a team like that.
They even set his contract up so they can get out of it at an earlier date. So it's not like he's doing, or like he's like locked in stone, or he's going to be the Giants quarterback for the next 20 years or something. They set it up like if he's not having success, we'll be prepared to, or we'll have the ability to get from under the next year or two, whatever it is, when it gets started. I don't, not wishing anything for that. I'd like for everybody to get their money, but that's the way they set it up. That's part of the business.
Well, I just want to do a quick exercise here to make a point about why you don't just bank on one quarterback in general on your roster, okay? I'm going to go through just the AFC, Howard. I'm going to name you the teams that either had their starter hurt this season for a variety of different reasons or had to go to other options. In the AFC East, the Patriots, Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers went down 4 snaps into the season. That's 2. Cincinnati lost Joe Burrow. We brought him up. Cleveland, they've been through 4 quarterbacks. They've won 11 games, which is the exception to the rule. You got to throw Pittsburgh in there.
Great offensive line, great defense.
Well, but in fairness, Howard, though, in fairness, they lost both of their starting tackles.
Yeah,
Cleveland,
that's true.
okay, it still held up. Okay. So that's a heck of an achievement. Pittsburgh, okay, 3 teams in the AFC North. You want to know why the Ravens, and they're a heck of a team, Lamar is held up compared to all those other teams.
Yep.
That's no coincidence.
Yep.
So I named you 5 teams. I'm only through 2 divisions. You go to the AFC South. The Houston Texans, C.J. Stroud missed games due to concussion. Trevor Lawrence has been banged up. C.J. Beathard played the last game. Indianapolis lost Anthony Richardson, their rookie quarterback. Gardner Minshew came in. Tennessee has played Will Levis and Ryan Tannehill. The entire AFC South lost the starter at some point. We're up to 9 for those of you counting at home. Okay? Now the 4th and final division in the AFC. Okay, Russell Wilson was healthy. He was benched, so I'm not going to throw them in. Patrick Mahomes is held up. Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt.
Yep.
We've reached 10, double digits, and then Justin Herbert got hurt late in the season, so you have now Easton Stick. 11 teams in the AFC. There are 4 divisions with 4 each. There's 16 teams in the AFC. 11 have lost their starting quarterback at some point this season.
Yeah.
You don't think it's important to prioritize beyond the guy that's on line 1?
Yep.
On the depth chart?
Absolutely.
I rest my case. I mean, I'm not even going to go through the NFC. Okay? I don't need to go through the rest of the league. I named half the league.
Yep.
So that's all you need to know from that standpoint. Bruce is in Albany joining us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, Bruce?
I think you just made an excellent point. And now that we've gotten to the Giants where we're actually talking about quarterbacks being killed in action.
That was kind of funny. I hate to say it.
We're really putting the bar in a different spot today, yes.
The Tyrod play, he didn't die. I'm like, what?
But when you have a quarterback being sacked 80 times a year, eventually they will be killed.
Oh, no, I hope not.
Well, no, you can't give up the amount of sacks that they have. There's no doubt about that, Bruce.
Quarterback hits and sacks.
Yeah.
It's been a rough
How many
one.
times you look at Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, Tom Brady, there's no way they would have been as successful if they were being sacked 70, 80 times a year. They wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
No.
They'd be killed in action.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at David Carr, by the way. And just to put things in perspective, Derek Carr's brother, who was on the Giants, his rookie year was a mess in 2002. And I'll let you continue, Bruce, but this is related to what you're talking about. He set the single-season rookie record. He was sacked 76 times, okay? So 76 for one quarterback. 3 quarterbacks have taken 83 sacks this season, which is 7 more, okay, than...
The Giants have given up 83 sacks
83
already?
sacks.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. No, Bruce was on point with his number. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 83
That's
sacks.
crazy.
I got a question for Howard, and this concerns offensive line. Now, could most tackles play guard? Because it seems like most guards probably wouldn't be good tackles. They don't have the foot speed. They don't have the quickness to stay with the speed rushers. But could most tackles play the guard position?
It depends. Like a lot of the guys, the movement is a little bit different because they're having to pull a lot, right? So a lot of tackles don't pull, except for the kid in San Francisco who can pull from one side of the line to the other. Most tackles are kind of like a stationary. They get used to that kick and slide to the back, and they can step back inside to protect for the spin and everything. But when you play guard, it's easier for a tackle to play guard if they're not involved in a lot of pulling. You know, if that big movement is a little bit harder, and they're usually taller guys too. So like when they're pulling, to get your big frame back and up and around to not clip the quarterback and step on his foot, not clip the center as you're going by him, it can get a little cloudy in there. So it's a little tougher than usual. But you know, if you're very athletic, you can do it.
I'm just thinking about Evan Neal. I mean, moving him to guard is a possibility. He is a really big, powerful guy. I didn't know if that was something that's.
Well,
I mean, he hasn't done well at tackle, but maybe he could be a good guard. I don't know.
Well, once he has his surgery, I think he's been like he limped through last season. He limped through this season, and this year he says he's going to go ahead and get the surgeries that they were talking to him about. So if he goes ahead and gets his surgery and gets healthy, then you'll be able to have a real judgment on him. I just hopefully they're not too serious of surgeries. It takes a long time to recover from them.
Yes.
All right, Bruce.
Anything around your feet takes time. All right, thanks, guys.
Yeah, you got it, Bruce. Appreciate the phone call. And Joe Shane was asked about Evan Neal's status and moving him to guard, and he referenced, listen, you go back, you watch the Alabama film, you could see him play at a high level. They're now trying to get that out of him. And I think you were alluding to an interesting point, and I have brought this up previously. When you look at games played for Evan Neal, this is not an excuse. This is just the fact. And you add up what he's done over 2 seasons. He's at 20 games. That's it. Think about it. You play 34 games. If you hold up, you play 34 games in your first 2 seasons. He's missed almost an entire season based on the 14 games that you take away.
Yeah, he had the knee last year. That hindered him for like, I don't know.
That cost him 4.
Yeah, it cost him 4. Then this year he had the knee, and then he had the ankle, and then he had the other ankle. So like when you're limping, like I you know, I'm not gonna say he's gonna be the same player, but Andrew Thomas, his first year or 2, he was hurt.
Correct.
And once he
had trouble staying on the field.
When he finally got that surgery, he was able to stay on the field, and he became the guy that everybody wanted him to be. But it's just hard when you're young. And you've never been injured to start getting little tweaks and nicks and stuff and then trying to figure it out. And remember, I tell people this all the time, and it's a big factor that when they legislated practice, like padded practices out of professional football, they legislated the pressure, the leaning, the leverage that you start to do and work on day in and day out. So when you go into games sometimes you catch a corner and you're not really sure how your body's going to react, you hurt things, and that's what they've been dealing with. And I'm not a doctor, but you do. But hurt
you play
things.
One on TV.
Yeah,
yes.
Sparring is important when you're going to fight, and until they can figure out a way to get these guys some more abilities to get some padded snaps where they can do some more pressure and learn how to lean, and like a guy like Hyde running at full speed, you bump him when he's running at full speed, something might blow off his body. I'm like, man, you guys they gotta really think about this, because it's getting harder and harder to keep the guys healthy. And it's not just the Giants, it's guys all around the league. I saw Chubb run across the field for Miami. He stopped, blew his knee out.
Yeah, non-contact injury.
Just a clip.
Yep.
Right. And that's your body's just not used to like full speed moving and defending yourself. And defending yourself isn't always defending yourself from another player, defending yourself from you. So it's interesting. So and I get tired of the people who tell me we're bigger, faster, stronger now. Like, no, you're not. You're not bigger than Reggie White. None of you are faster than Darryl Green or Deion Sanders or Bo Jackson for that matter. Like, it's just not true. Like, Harold Carmichael was a receiver. He's 6'5". Like, it's just
the
so,
Eagles, yeah.
So it's like we don't see players like that today. You'll see one-offs that are big guys like that, but the bigger, stronger, faster is a theory that people keep talking about, but it's not working out for them on the field.
And I would say it applies to basketball as well.
Yeah.
If we were having a basketball discussion, Howard, I'd bring you on board to support my cause in that department, too. They make the same case about the NBA.
The NBA, bigger.
Howard, be careful what comes out of your mouth next year.
Like, there's not a Wilt Chamberlain in the NBA now, but Wilt was like a tree amongst like little sproutlings.
Is what you were saying?
Yeah, like
we had Bill Russell, but
Bill Russell was like 3 inches shorter than him.
He was
maybe 4. Yeah. So like it's
but Bill got the better of him though. So.
Yeah, but like the guys were tougher back in the day.
Yeah.
They were much.
I'm not going to disagree with you there.
I was watching like NBA fights just the other day on YouTube. I'm like, why do they have NBA fights? What is this? I'm like watching them, like, holy smokes! These guys were they were going at it.
Well, Lakers Celtics.
Oh,
Did you see the clothesline with Kurt Rambis and Kevin McHale?
Goodness. I just I'm like that. Those were all lawsuits now.
Without a doubt. Well, and the worst of all, and this shouldn't be mimicked, is what happened to Rudy Tomjanovich.
Yeah, got punched dead in the face.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was not fun. Right. And for the newer generation, the former Rockets head coach. He actually played before he was the head man.
Or how about Danny Ainge biting the thumb of Tree Rollins that time? It was crazy, man.
Yeah.
Bird was like punching dudes in the head. Dudes were punching Bird in the head. I'm like,
you had to put your big boy pants on.
What is going on?
No.
Like, that was an error for Charles Oakley. He just missed it.
Oh yeah, no, the enforcer.
No.
Yeah. Well, that Knicks line with Mason, Oakley. And
was,
Ewing.
God bless Mason. But that was crazy, man.
No, those guys, that was a brick wall. you had to make sure you brought your A game, because your B game, you would walk out where you would have to be assisted out of the arena. Okay, our earlier caller, it would have applied to those battles in the NBA. Then I would have been singing your tune with respect to that. Yes. Now, looking ahead, because we've been teasing this, so this is the big drum roll part of today's program. Yes, thank you for the sound
effects.
Yes.
Sound effects.
So Nick Sirianni spoke with reporters yesterday, and this has been stealing headlines. And he was asked about the approach to the Giants game. First of all, let's paint the picture here. The Giants, they thought maybe they could influence against the Eagles how the NFC East would play out. But Dallas now controls its own destiny. Because with the Eagles losing to the Cardinals and Dallas beating Detroit, what happened is they flip-flopped. They are the same record, but controlling your own destiny flip-flop. Now Dallas goes to Washington. They win. They don't need assistance. Dallas wins the NFC East. And I'm preparing all of you out there. My favorite statistic is going to be alive and well. Okay, we're going to have another year where we're not going to have a repeat NFC East champ, and you are going to hear me repeat it over and over again in 2024. I am preparing the audience mentally that my favorite statistic will be breathing if Dallas wins, okay, because we're not going to have a repeat champ. The Eagles, they have to win the NFC East for this statistic to go away.
Why shouldn't it be Dallas? It's going to be hilarious, and then the Eagles will win.
Wait, you're saying Dallas is going to lose to Washington?
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen. Listen, that could happen. The NFL is crazy. But all I'm saying is that this is why Sirianni was asked that question.
Yeah.
Because the games are up against one another, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. And the NFL does that on purpose because they don't want one result to happen and then make it easy for a team to say we're not going to play anybody. So I think what Sirianni was saying is, and we've seen this with teams, I've heard this from executives and coaches, I would say probably the Eagles' approach, Howard, is going to be anyone hurt, they're not going to play. Like Devontae Smith, who got banged up, I'd be surprised if he plays. But if there's healthy guys, they'll see how the Cowboys game plays out. And if Dallas starts jumping out in front by a sizable lead, you could start seeing Nick Sirianni pull back some guys. Remember, keep this in mind too. They don't have the luxury. You only dress 46 guys, okay? It's not as if, Howard, you know this. Even if you want to rest all your starters, you need 22 between the 11 on offense and 11 on defense and special teams. When you add that up, how many guys can you afford to rest that are dressed for Sunday's game?
This is what I think about that. And I appreciate, resting starters, I get. And if a team's going to rest them, they're going to rest them anyway. But if you go into a game and you're trying to scoreboard watch and you have people up top trying to give you the score so you'll know where the other game
At
is.
halftime, maybe.
At
they tell you.
halftime,
Yeah, correct.
that would actually have to be management to have to come in because you're not allowed
Without a
to
doubt.
watch any video of
No,
anything
not at all.
when you're during the game.
Yep.
So if someone comes in at halftime and goes, okay, Cowboys are ahead by 20, set them down. And then you're like, okay, you're out. Then they're not going to be playing hard the entire time. You know that, right?
You mean in terms of the first half? Even the
The
approach?
players aren't going to be playing hard.
In the second half.
In any
I'm
half.
trying to,
At any time.
Well, but if they don't know the score in the first half, why wouldn't they be playing hard?
You play hard the entire time. If there's a thought that, hey, if the other team starts to play well, we can pull guys out, meaning a game that we're not even involved in, you can't coach that. You can't get a mental set for your entire team of that. You can't do because guys will be like, hey man, I hope they blow them out so we can get out, or I hope we have a chance to win. There's no hope. You play your game. There's impossible to have the mindset of, okay, the mindset is the entire time we're going out to blow you off the field. And if that's not the mindset the entire time, that's when guys get hurt. Also, if you're not giving 100% the entire time, I love these scenarios. I love the way guys are talking about it. I love Sirianni kind of floating it in the air. Because he knows he's not going to do that. Like, you can't coach that. If there are guys on the team, you mean to tell me that Brown is like, I'm not playing. Like, what are you going to do?
Well, I get what I'm getting at. Can you see a scenario? Let me just spell this out, okay? And I'm with you. You should be going it. First of all, the Eagles have a legitimate shot to win the NFC East title.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, the mathematics, if Dallas loses, they win the NFC East. So, I mean, you don't need extra motivation for that. But let me just paint the scenario here. They get to halftime, okay? They're playing their main guys against the Giants in the first half. Word gets from the front office. I'm in agreement with you. It's not the coaching staff. Howie Roseman, their GM, he comes down to the locker room. He tells Nick Sirianni, Nick, Dallas is up 20-0. Okay, it's not looking very promising that we're going to get the ball to bounce our way. Couldn't you see him say, Jalen come out, Marcus Mariota play the second half? I mean, couldn't that happen? No, I'm asking you. What do you think? You can't see that happening?
This is what I see happening. I see, like, you go into a game, right, and like, think of it the way I think of it. I think of it from a player's perspective.
Sure.
Now, you're going to think you got to protect Jalen. What if Jalen has some incentive clause in his contract that he's very close to?
Okay, I got you. Well, then maybe he brings that up during this week.
Jalen, come on out and sit down. Everybody knows what your incentives are. The coaches know. Everybody knows.
Sure.
What if there's a receiver, or A.J. Brown, if it's a lineman that or whoever that you're going to quote unquote pull out and give a rest to, that you're taking away some reps or some opportunities. If I have one more catch, I'm going to get $1 million. If I have one more of this, I can get whatever. Well, that's you better get it early. Like, yeah, no, you can. If guys are coming out, then that means their contracts are all done. They've made all their things, and they're not close to anything. If people are close to something, you're pulling money out of their pockets. That's a possibility. And we're looking at the game, and it's like, oh, it's the sport of the game. We got to protect the guys. Like, I can remember when it all happened. I can remember guys like Greenberg and talking about, you got to get your quarterback off the field. You got to protect him. I'm like, why are you protecting him? You're playing games. It's football.
Sure.
Like, you can get hurt anytime. If you're going to get hurt the first game of preseason. If it's worse to get hurt, like Aaron Rodgers, the first game of the season. Let me get you hurt now so I'll know what we need to do and what we need to do to replace you. But I don't get this theory that, like, the last game of the season, I've been in teams where we've won the championship, the East, and, like, we got a game to go. I did not want to come out the field. I had too many incentives tied to me playing. Me starting, me getting so many reps.
You had those dollar bills in your eyes,
man, you talking about some, hey, Howard, well, go to the sideline. For what?
Well, you should have had the clause of your contract in your back pocket and whipped it out during the game. Excuse me, line 1, subject C. Yes.
You'd be shocked. So, like, and what Sirianni's saying, like, if he's doing that, then he's defeating the purpose of coaching. He's not coaching.
Well, keep in mind also, there's a lot of coaches that say things to the public, and then Howard, they do the complete opposite. So it stole some headlines yesterday. I personally would not read too much into it. I'm with you.
Or he's just trying to, like, the Giants are in the top 5. Well, if they win this game, they'll be in like 8 or 9. Let's put them at 8 or 9.
And if they're thinking that, that should be the last thing on their mind about where the Giants draft,
Never
based
know.
on what they
Never
have
know.
ahead. But
I don't trust the Eagles.
well, I'll give you one other example
I'm
why
joking.
why I like your mindset. If you remember, the Steelers played the Browns in the COVID year, 2020. Okay, this is another example. This doesn't relate to the Giants-Eagles situation, and Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh was already in the playoffs. Cleveland still was fighting for its life, and the Steelers started resting some of their guys. So Cleveland gets in the playoffs. Who do you think the Steelers play the following week in the wild card round? They play Cleveland. And what does Cleveland do? They go into Pittsburgh and they roll over them.
Yep.
So my point is, you could have kept Cleveland down to the playoffs.
Yep. That's what I would do. I'd step on anybody's neck.
And I would do the same thing as you. So, there's different schools of thought. Sometimes you overthink it. It comes back to bite you. And sometimes you got to prioritize Howard
That's
Cross's
hilarious.
bank account, too. So that should be the biggest priority when it comes to it.
Always your money.
Without a doubt.
Don't mess with my money.
Don't mess with your money. That's the biggest lesson we could take away here on the very first show of 2024.
Happy New Year. Don't
Yes.
mess with my money.
There you go. We'll leave it at that. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, part of the Giants platforms everywhere, and Giants.com/podcast. Be up and running again on Wednesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, as we gear up for the final game of the regular season. For Howard Cross, I'm Lance Meadow. Happy and a healthy New Year. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest, and we'll speak to you on Wednesday. Have a good one.